In my videos about the SP404 mk2, I brought up the fact that you couldn't record chromatically into the sequencer, there was no polyphonic sample playback, and there was no step sequencer. But all of that changes today because with the new update to the SP, we get polyphonic sample playback, you can record chromatically and polyphonically into the sequencer live, and there's also the addition of a new step sequencer mode, which makes the SP404 mk2 much more usable for anybody making electronic music. And in today's video I'm going to show you how the new step sequencer works, I'm going to show you the polyphonic sample playback mode, I'm going to show you how to record polyphonically and chromatically into the step sequencer, and also talk about some of the limitations with the new step sequencer. And a very big thank you to Roland for sponsoring today's video. So let's start by talking about the new step sequencer mode. So we have our samples here. You can actually download all of these samples for free over at my store. It's linked in the description. It's a little gift from me to you, so you can go and check it out if you want to. Now previously, if we go to pattern select, what you could do is live record into the sequencer. Now this is really nice for lo-fi hip-hop and other styles where you want a more unquantized sound. But for many forms of electronic music, it's of course not ideal. So to enter step record mode, hit pattern select, hit record, hit the pattern we want, and you can see it says TR rec, and that is the step record mode. We can switch back and forth using remain. So we can do real time and we can do TR rec. Now press record again. Now we can set the BPM and the length of the pattern as well as the shuffle. So let's do a 2-bar pattern, and we use this encoder here to move between the different pages. So here's the first 16 steps and the second 16 steps for 32 in total. Now to select your sample, hit subpad, select whatever sample you want, let go, and now we can step sequence that sample. I'm going to use this kick here, just put down a simple beat. As you can see here, it's just going through the steps. So as you can see, pretty simple to build a beat. There are some more advanced features though. And one thing to keep in mind here is that when we are in pattern select, I start a beat like this, I press record, we're back to live recording. So in order to enter step record mode while we are playing a pattern, we exit, hold shift, press record, and now we are back into step record mode. I think that these open hi-hat here are a bit loud. So how do I change this? Well, as you can see here, we have substep, pitch chromatic, and velocity. Now these settings you decide on before you put down a step. So if I decrease the velocity to 60 and then put down a few steps. These steps are now 60 in velocity. You can also see here on the screen what bar you're currently in. So that's nice. And also what pattern is playing. Now if we hold shift, we also get access to additional controls. So we can do shuffle, we can do percentage start. So let's say I want them to be, slightly off. I can hit shift and start, say, 5%. Just giving them a slight, they're dragging behind. Now you can also record some automation. So if we hold down roll here, we can actually record velocity automation. and pitch automation. So in terms of automation, what you can record if you hold roll is substep using this knob here, pitch, chromatic, and velocity. So those are recorded into the step sequencer. So with the substeps and automations, we can create some pretty vibey beats. And here I have live recorded bass and a pad sound. And live recorded a synth sound on top. Now you might have seen something else interesting here. We have also substep. So we could do something like this. If you have longer samples, you can also change from substep to hold step. And here we can set a hold from 1 to last. So this you can use, for example, with longer melodic samples. So I have this pad here. And if I just put it down here on the first step, but if I instead set it to, say, 2 here, you can see way shorter. And here I can show you, so we can also do pitch chromatics. If I wanted to go up, say 4 semis. So as you can see, you can program chromatic pitch changes in the step sequencer. You can also set a scale to the chromatic mode and the step sequencer will follow that, so that's pretty neat. But you can't program polyphonic sequences in the step sequencer, but you can record polyphonically into the sequencer, and that is something I want to show you in the next part. Now when I have a pattern, what I like to do is just copy it onto another slot here, just hold copy, press here, done. Now I have a copy of the pattern, and I like to live record on top of this pattern here. The reason why I copy it is because it's much easier to just delete the second one and just do a new copy than go in and delete individual notes. So we have this pad here, and now I want to talk about the next new interesting feature, which is of course that we can record not only chromatically into the sequencer, but also polyphonically. So I'll start off by showing you the chromatic recording. So going to pattern select, and first I want to do pattern edit, select pattern 6 here, menu, and I want to duplicate, making it longer. So now that we have a longer pattern to work with, press the pattern, press record, rehearsal, shift, and now you can play whatever you want. Let's record some bass over this. A very neat thing that we also added is more undo functions. So we can just hit Shift, undo, and remove here. So as you can hear, we can record chords into the sequencer, and you can also overdub it with additional notes as long as you are in the poly mode, which is just really nice. And you can use it with an external keyboard to play the samples. The next thing I want to talk about is that you can play samples polyphonically, which is something I've been wishing for ever since I first tried the SP404 mk2. It's also something that I brought up in my review and my follow-up videos. It's also something that I communicated very clearly to Roland, that we gotta be able to play samples, not only chromatically into the sequencer, but also polyphonically. And I wanna think that I actually had a little role in making it happen. And I just really like that we can now do it, because it opens up the SP404 so much more. It makes it so much easier to create music on it. So here I've loaded a sample. We hit Shift, chromatic mode, and here we use Remain to cycle between mono mode, legato mode, or poly mode. And now we can set up any MIDI keyboard, set it to the 16th MIDI channel, and we now have 2 octaves that we can play. I think 2 octaves is the range that we have available. So you can of course record polyphonically into the sequencer using a MIDI keyboard. So as you could hear, we can live record chord progressions and other types of polyphonic playing into the sequencer. You cannot step record chords or step record polyphonic sequences into the step sequencer, but you can live record it. You can also overdub it like you saw. So basically, while you have the sequence running, you have record enabled, you can just keep adding notes, and it works pretty well. Let's talk about some limitations of the new step sequencer. Now, I'm very positive about this addition, and the reason is simply that the step sequencer brings a lot of extra functionality to this device. It changes who it's for and what it can be used for. For example, if you're like me and you always want to start with a programmed beat, live recording the beats into the SP was a hassle for somebody like myself. Now, I get that the whole playing live thing is part of the SP legacy, but I just really like that they've added a step sequencer for us who are pretty bad at playing live, or for styles of music where it just works better with the step sequencer. Now, one clear limitation is that you can't program chords into the step sequencer, but you can live record it into the sequencer. Another limitation is that there's no changing a step once you put it down. So you change the settings to whatever you want and then put down a step. And if you want to change that step, you just remove it, change the settings, put down another step. There's also no copying of steps that I've noticed, so that's something to keep in mind. And while the step sequencer is nice, it's not comparable to, say, a Digitact, Circuit Rhythm, MC707, because those step sequencers are, they're more feature packed. You can use them to sequence external gear. This step sequencer is not meant for this. I think it's best viewed as a really cool addition that makes the SP more useful. It's not meant to rival, say, an MC707. That's a very different device. The Digitact is very different, Syntact is very different, but it's a really cool addition nevertheless. And like I showed you in the video, when you're playing a sample chromatically, you only have 2 octaves to work with, so that is also a limitation. And just to make it really clear, the sequencer in this is not meant for sequencing external gear. That is not its intended use case. So with all of this in mind, let me know down in comments what you think about the new SP update, if it's for you, if it's something that makes the SP more interesting to you, or if not. So as always, have a great day and hope to see you in the next video.